141 in the name of Deputy Michael Healy. Right.
Yeah, thank you very much. Minister Burke, could I please ask you the following? Can the Minister provide an update to the House on the short-term letting bill, please?
Minister.
Thank you, Healy, and I thank Deputy Healy for this very important question. In April of last year, I obtained government approval for the general scheme for the short-term letting and tourism bill. Once enacted, this bill will provide statutory framework for regulating the short-term letting sector, including the establishment of a national register. This register will have been broadly welcomed by the tourism sector, will be implemented and managed by Fáilte Ireland in compliance with the EU short-term rental regulation. The register will launch on the 1st of December 2026 with a legal obligation on all operators to register by the 31st of December 2026. The new housing policy for short-term let activity has been set out today at Cabinet by Minister for Housing, Local Government and Heritage James Brown TD in a national planning statement. The statement provides for a balanced framework that supports sustainable tourism, protects communities, maintains housing supply and enables clear, consistent decision-making for both property owners and planners. The new housing policy restricts the approval of new planning permissions for short-term lets in cities and larger towns with a population of over 20,000 in the last census. However, planning permission for short-term letting can be granted to preserve heritage or traditional buildings which are unsuitable for the long-term housing market. Upper floors in mixed-use buildings or small structures beside an owner-occupier home can also be approved, provided neighbours are not adversely affected. Permission will generally be favoured where dwellings have been used continuously for short-term letting for at least 7 years without enforcement action in line with the established use rights. A simplified administrative version of the application process for retention, specifically for short-term lets, will be introduced. Short-term let accommodation providers in towns with a population of less than 20,000 will have 2 years to meet planning compliance, and additional provisions are being included in the bill to give effect to this measure. This work will be completed shortly, and I intend to bring the bill to Government in the coming weeks to seek approval for publication in advance of the bill enactment by early autumn.
Minister, could I please ask you, Minister, to give confidence to the sector, the long-established self-catering operators who have been operating legally for many years, to give them confidence that they will not be forced out of business as a consequence of the new short-term letting regulations?
And I know you've done a lot of work in this matter as well. So first of all, what I would say is for those who are in towns of under 20,000, where it's not viable to build a hotel, like the south and the west coast, areas which you need the short-term lets for tourism, we will have a simplified administrative process in those areas that are under 20,000 for those who have been in operation over 7 years to go through. We've issued a planning statement which will have a presumption for those to be granted planning. So a simplified process and a presumption to be granted planning to ensure that they can continue in operation, because I as Minister absolutely want to see short-term lets continue in areas where they are needed, and the west coast and the south, Kerry is a prime example, Mayo, Leitrim, Longford, rural Galway, as we know, there's areas that really need short-term lets to absorb the capacity because accommodation isn't there in the form of hotels. We'll be bringing forward an accommodation strategy as well this year, trying to incentivise the growth of high-quality hotel accommodation as well, which will be another piece in our armoury.
Yeah. Thank you, Minister. You see, I know your heart is in the right place on this matter, and that's why I'm asking you the questions. What communications have you had as Minister in relation to the National Planning Statement, and will it be made available for consultation with stakeholders before implementation, and what would you like to see in it?
Minister, to conclude.
Thank you, Deputy Healy. Yes, I've had a lot of negotiation with Minister James Brown, really to achieve a balance. Obviously, it's critical that we have accommodation in areas in our cities where there is an acute pressure on housing units. We're in a housing crisis, and that those units are made available for wider society, which is so important. Equally, in areas where the tourism sector is so important because it drives that economic activity in rural Ireland, that we are able to have short-term lets continue, have already been in operation. The planning statement will be published, and it will state that there will be a presumption of planning to be approved on all short-term lets that have that are in an area of under 20,000, and there will be a simplified application process for them to go through, and we'll have a 2-year window for them to regularise once the register comes in vogue.
Thank you, Minister.